Hello, Intactivists, and today we are going to be talking about Foregen and them actually going public. You know, when they complete human trials and everything's all exciting and yay, right? And how much money it will cost them and how long it's going to take. But first, let's go over how much Foregen has raised in donations thus far. So if you look at this chart that I have up here, I took their monthly newsletter of February 10th, 2022. It gave us the total of how much they raised since then, which was about $1.3 million. And then if you go to the newsletter of January 10th, 2023, it gives you how much they raised for the entire year. And that gives you about $1.5 million. And then after January 10th, I just went through the entire year, month by month by month. I ended up getting 1.8 million roughly. And then I made a prediction for January. I know Foregen is doing this matching campaign of $50,000. So I went ahead and I took as much hope as I could muster for the month. And I was like, okay, maybe they're going to get $50,000 raised by their normal donors. And then another person's going to give $50,000 just in case. And then the 50K matching. So that's why I predicted 150K, because I'd rather be high to prove a point right now. So anyways, if you look at that number, Foregen has raised under $2 million in 12 years. Future pots here. So I do know that Foregen rose $40,390, which got doubled. So Foregen made $80,780 for January. I predicted 150,000 just to be high. So we're splicing hairs and it doesn't really matter or affect this video because it is still under $2 million that Foregen has raised in 12 years. Foregen has made lots of time predictions on when they're going to finish certain objectives like animal trials, rat trials, sheep trials, when they're going to get things published. And Foregen has developed a bit of a reputation of being off on their times of completion and missing their deadlines that they give to donors. Like for this one, for instance, this was in January 11th, 2022, human trial planned to begin April 2023. And if you've noticed that we're way past April 2023 and human trials have not begun yet. Now, I know some intactivists are going to argue saying, oh no, if you look here on the April 2nd roadmap to animal trials completion, it says that Dr. McKell feels confident that he can begin his preparations for human clinical trials this summer. So, oh look, they're not that off because they're doing human clinical trials this summer, and that was on April 2nd. So look, not too bad off, right? Well, however, he's going to be working with cadavers, and this isn't a part of human trials. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you go to their human clinical trials, the clinical trial abstract in December 2021, they describe that, hey, we're going to go April 1st, 2023. That's the trial start date. That's their estimate. And it starts off with faculty ethics committee application, but nowhere in here does it say cadaver lab experiment. So the cadaver lab experiment isn't really considered human trials, I would argue, because that would be the equivalent of saying, oh no, sheep trials is preparing for human trials. So they're correct because they're preparing for human trials. And there you go. See, sheep trials to begin human trials. See, they weren't wrong. They're doing human trials because it both has the phrase human trials in it. Yeah, so that doesn't make too much sense. So I think Foregen missed their deadline there. So that's just one example of Foregen missing their deadlines. Now, I do know Foregen predicts a lot of times. However, Foregen doesn't predict how much money they actually need to succeed. The only place that I have found where Foregen openly said, oh yes, we need this much money was Eric Klopper's World Summit speech, where they laid out quite nicely how much money they need to go before going IPO. So this was made in December of 2016, so 7 years ago. Eric Klopper went ahead and explained they need about $29 million before going IPO. Now, here are some things I've noticed on this graph. There are 3 things to go over: the money side of it, the time side, and inconsistencies. So if we go over the money side of this, Foregen raised about $2 million of their $4 million budget. Their seed round and Series A round would make $4 million. And they've already went through about $2 million, and they haven't even done the 10 men that they want to do clinical trials on. They haven't done that yet. And I don't know how their 2 patents being filed is working. Also, another concern that other people have that was brought to my attention is inflation. Almost 7 years of inflation has passed. So this $29 million in just 7 years is looking more like $37 million. That's how much. I can expand this for you guys so you guys can go ahead and see the $37,100,913 that they need. If you just account for inflation, that's how much Foregen would need, inflation adjusted. Now, other things that I've noticed is the timeline. So Foregen is 5 years off their timeline right now because they've raised about $2 million and they're phase 3 still. So they predicted that they would get done with clinical trials of pigs or animals back in 2018. And right now we're in 2023. So they're about 5 years off their timeline. And if you look at their human clinical trials of doing 10 circumcised men, we're way off their predictions. Another thing is, I know a lot of people say, oh, but that's only if they had the money. If they had the money, they would be on track. Well, the thing is Foregen has about $2 million right now, which granted, I know that gets eaten up through time, but we haven't even completed animal trials yet. And Foregen's halfway through their budget. So let's extrapolate this timeline. When this video got made, I'm guessing they were on the seed round stage, because if you look at their phases of their website, right here, and you click on this peer review article, this peer review article was made December 22nd, 2018. So that means 2 years have passed when Eric Klopper made that World Stem Cell Summit's presentation. 2 years have passed. So I think it would be safe to say that when Eric made that speech, they were probably sitting around stage 1, stage 2. For argument's sake, we'll say they were at stage 1, and currently they are now at stage 3. So we'll say that they've moved, going off of Eric Klopper's chart here. We'll say that in 7 years, when this was released, we'll say that they were in phase 1. So we'll say they were in phase 1 when this got released, and now they're on phase 3. So that's 2 phases, right? And now they're on phase 3. So it took them 7 years to move from phase 1 to phase 3. And if we just extrapolate this, how long do you think it's going to go from phase 3 to phase 5? Probably about 7 years. So if we extrapolate the timeline, it's going to take about 7 to 10 years for them to reach the end of phase 5. Another thing that I've noticed about their timeline is that they're completely off their timeline now. Look, this ends at 2021. We're in 2023. So this has taken them a lot longer to go ahead and get done with. And I know a lot of people say, oh, well, if they had the money, they would be on schedule, but they never got the money. But however, like, Foregen expected from 2020 to 2021 for them to make $25 million. And Foregen is nowhere close of getting that in, the 2 years if history keeps on repeating itself. And I know you have the exponential rolls of money, but come on, guys, like 2 years to get $25 million. I mean, maybe if you went IPO right here, but I don't see that being donor money. Also, what we can take from their timeline is that it took them 12 years to raise about $2 million. If Foregen doesn't start finding new friends or increase their cash flow somehow, and it remains the same, of $220,000 a year, it's going to take them 122.72 years before they can reach the extra $27 million that they needed back in 2016 to complete Series B round and go IPO. Now let's talk about their inconsistencies. They have changed from pigs to sheep, which we never got a reason why they decided to change, but okay. Also, they never talk about the rat trials in here. Foregen has changed their minds and want to do human clinical trials not on 10 circumcised men, but 15. And if you go here, see it right here, they say they want a total of 15 male patients right here. So they want to do 15 male patients. But then their latest and greatest is, oh, we actually want 25 people for human trials. That's 2.5 times more than originally planned, which equals more money and more time. That's crazy. That's so much more checking up on people, more resources, and obviously you have to do the procedure more often than just doing it 10 times. So once again, Foregen isn't updating the costs of all of this, and they haven't made any predictions, which is getting a lot of people nervous. Another thing that is inconsistent in their project timeline and costs, there's many things that they keep adding. Like for instance, they've added cadaver labs and histologics, and these costs are not covered in this graph, and this all costs more time and more money. Also, another thing in this chart is that they're showing the IPO after everything is built and paid for. But now, from what I can tell, Foregen wants to go IPO during or right after human clinical trials. So between Series A and Series B, they now want to go human clinical trials. I could be mistaken on this though. I don't know. Foregen doesn't give a solid response to this. Hopefully they can go and answer that question. So what are my thoughts? How much money do I think Foregen really needs for their surgery to go public? Well, let's look at other biotech companies. This here is Amplifica. They have raised $11.8 million Series A financing. So they've raised $11.8 million. Amplifica, all what they're doing is they're helping bald people regrow hair, which I would argue is a much simpler task than what Foregen's trying to do, right? So we know they've raised $11.8 million in their Series A funding. And look at this. They announced it March 1st, and it closed September 30th. So 7 months. It took them to raise $11.8 million, which means that there's less company drag. Company drag is the longer it takes a company to do something, the more you have to pay people to sit around and do nothing, right? Makes sense. Like Foregen did 12 years to raise less than $2 million. You're gonna lose a lot of money in that 12 years versus just 7 months. And also, like I said, Amplifica is doing something less complicated, but they've raised way more money than Foregen by like 6 times in only 7 months. And this still isn't out yet, and this is only Series A. Foregen in their Series A, they're only asking for $3 million, and they can't get it. So Amplifica, that's only trying to regrow hair, which is much simpler, asking for $12 million, which is 4 times more than Foregen's. You would think that what Foregen's doing would be way more complicated than hair. But, you know, I don't know, maybe regrowing sex organs is less expensive and less complicated than regrowing hair. But also Amplifica is not done yet. This is only Series A. They still need to do Series B, which typically costs quite a bit of money. So I also looked at 44 biotech companies, and look, this is Series D funding. That's $433 million, which granted Foregen's not doing that. This is Series C, which Foregen doesn't have. That's $330 million. This is Series B, $321 million. And let's just go all the way down, shall we? Let's just start looking at the smaller ones. Let's keep going down. Okay, so, Series A, $15 million. Foregen Series A was only 3 million. Oh, look at this, Series B, 175 million. Foregen Series B was only $25 million. Oh, this is seed money. Seed money right here is $17 million. Shape TX, $148 million for Series B. And if you look at this one for Stem Sun Therapeutics, for their Series A for $22.5 million for just Series A, they're regrowing hair. They're regrowing hair. That's what they're doing. Right? Like right here, they're regrowing hair. Like, for reals. So if you think Foregen's more complicated than regrowing hair and, other things in the biotech company world, you're probably going to think that, oh, it's going to cost a lot more than just $29 million, right? So after everything is all said and considered with the biotech companies and how much they cost to start up, with most startup biotech companies needing around $100 million, somewhere in that range, with inflation, with the fact that Foregen is regrowing something that's never been regrown before, I'm going to guess that Foregen needs about $80 million for a comfortable launch. And if Foregen would like to correct me and say, oh no, we don't need $80 million, please, Foregen, let us know how much you actually need and what's predicted. But once again, this is just my opinion. Please let me know what you guys all think about this down in the comments below. How much money do you think Foregen needs? And how long do you think Foregen is going to take to go IPO? Alright, thank you guys for watching. Bye!